For more, let's bring in former Secret Service Special Agent in Charge, Frank Loveridge. He spent 22 years with the agency, including as supervisor in the Presidential Protection Division during President Obama's second term. Mr. Loveridge, thank you. First, you have to recognize and commend the professionalism of the agent on the advance team. I mean, who saw that muzzle in a chain link fence with the gunman allegedly hiding in the bushes. But honestly, why did it even get to that? It should never have gotten to that point where we're a hair's breadth away from losing a former president of the United States. What do you see should have been done potentially, and why wasn't the street closed?
Well, thank you for having me on. The first thing, I've been on the golf course with President Bush and with President Obama, and the methodology that we use to protect them is a pitch and catch strategy where we move with them down the golf course. But when you have a perimeter that's tight with concealment from bushes, and thank God the Secret Service agent was able to see that muzzle and be able to attempt to neutralize the shooter. If that hadn't happened, it could have been a very bad day today. So one thing we need to do is we need to start giving President Trump, former President Trump, the assets he needs. I know we've moved in that direction. I know that Acting Director Ron Rowe is doing his best now to beef up the detail, put the right people there. But we have to expand that perimeter. We have concealed locations, and we need to make sure that we have those posted, and they should be swept prior to the event.
Talk about sweeping. I mean, would local police perhaps look through the bushes? Why? Maybe that was done and he came in after that, but wouldn't that be just 101?
Well, 101 is when you sweep, you have to hold it. So once you've swept it and cleared it, you have to put someone there with eyes on it to make sure no one comes back in. And that may or may not have happened. Once again, it's too late to tell. But from what I see and what I've heard at this short time since the event occurred, Secret Service did a great job at evacuating the president out of there. Unfortunately, we can't let people get that close with a weapon to the president. 300 to 500 yards away, a shooter with a weapon. We've got to clear those areas and we've got to post them so that no one can hide and get the advantage and make it become an action versus a reaction.
I mean, that just seems basic. Why do you think that wasn't done now, or why isn't it done? We saw what happened, in Butler. You just hit on the head. I mean, 300 yards with an AK-47 style rifle and a scope. That's it.
Yeah, it's too close. And obviously, we got to do a better job at securing the perimeter. And we have to make sure that we push that perimeter out so we don't have anyone sitting with a rifle ready to take out a former president of the United States.
On Capitol Hill, the task force on the attempted assassination of former President Trump, they say they're concerned about political violence. They want a briefing with the Secret Service on this. Of course, they may have to change the name to the attempted assassinations of former President Trump, sadly. I mean, what will it take, from your experience, for us not to worry about this, for this not to happen again, especially as it has twice in the last 2 months?
It's unconscionable, the fact that we're talking about this just a little over 2 months after the first assassination attempt. We've got to do a better job. They know that. The bottom line is President Trump needs to get the resources that we would give the President of the United States. I had that luxury when I was in the president's detail for 9 years. We had every asset that you could ask for. We had police, local, state. We had K-9 units. He needs that. He needs that now. It's obvious. Second attempt. Just think back in just July 12th, the day before the first assassination attempt, we arrested a Pakistani national with ties to Iran, who one of the targets he was looking at was President Trump. The threat is real, and we need to make sure we do a better job at pushing out the perimeter and making sure we're not dealing with a man with a rifle.
Yeah, ironically, I'll be in court tomorrow. The Pakistani suspect, a Pakistani man who is charged, will be arraigned here in New York City for that very conspiracy. He had spent some time in Iran, and there is also concern about Iran's threats. We know that they want to try to assassinate former President Trump and other high-level officials for retaliation of the killing of Soleimani. That we don't know if that was this. No indication yet. Any indication, do you think, when we'll find out about this suspect's motive, more about the suspect, whether he was a lone wolf, whether there were 30 seconds left, any political bent, or that rhetoric that many have claimed potentially fuel this?
Well, we got to let the FBI do their job. What we need to know is who is he associated with on social media, check all the records to see if he has any ties to anyone back overseas, if this was state sponsored. I mean, there's a lot of things. He just might have been a lone wolf. We don't know that yet. But we need to do our research, and we need to do it quickly, because the big mistake we made last time was not communicating to the American people, and they deserve to know.
Yep, they do. And we will find out. Frank Loveridge, thank you.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.